right, Cowboys Nation, the news is official. It's a new day. It's a new dawn in Dallas, and it's a new head coach. Brian Schottenheimer, your offensive coordinator, now the 10th head coach for the Dallas Cowboys, the 9th hire in the Jerry Jones era since he purchased this team. And this unbiased and realistic Cowboys fan is about to talk about it. And I think if you've been following the news, if you've been following the reports that have been coming out for the past few days, this was in the works. This was going to happen. And I will say this right off the bat. I feel like the search was not serious. I feel like the search for your next head coach should be more in depth. You should have these interviews planned. You should want early access to the top candidates. You should want to interview the top candidates, and the Dallas Cowboys never did. And I mentioned this on the other channels if you're not following me on Instagram or TikTok, but when Mike McCarthy did not return and when the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy parted ways, that was a surprise to me. That was a surprise because I was expecting Mike to be back. And I think the Joneses were expecting Mike to be back. And I think the Joneses presented him with an incentive-based contract. Mike did not like that, and he decided to walk. Now, Mike's in his own, on his own search right now. Now there's only one more vacant spot, and that's with the New Orleans Saints, now that the Dallas Cowboys filled their spot with Brian Schottenheimer. And so thus that created a little bit of scrambling. The Joneses weren't expecting that, so they didn't get to Aaron Glenn, who was a top candidate, or Ben Johnson, who was a top candidate. And now in the back of my mind, as an unbiased and realistic Cowboys fan, I know the Cowboys are never going to sign them. I know they're not going to actually pay that much for a head coach. But you at least want to see your team try. You want to see a franchise who vocally says they're about winning and about doing anything and everything they can to achieve their 6th Super Bowl win in franchise history. You want to see them make those moves. And they don't, and they didn't. And they conducted a search. Kellen Moore, Robert Saleh, Leslie Frazier, and then they bring in Brian Schottenheimer. Now, so that's what I'll say about this search. I thought it was unserious. It showed that the Cowboys were unprepared. And right now, and as I've said all season long, this is a dysfunction right now. The Dallas Cowboys are dysfunctional. The way that they approach this, the way that they approach Mike McCarthy, they didn't know what they wanted to do with Mike McCarthy. They almost want people to make decisions for them, and they don't want to be responsible for their own decisions. There's no vision with this organization right now, at least from a football standpoint. We have vision from a monetary standpoint, but no vision from a football kind of mindset of we're supposed to be a winning football team. And I really felt like Mike kind of held things together as best as he could. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to see that. Now, my thoughts on Brian Schottenheimer. Again, unfortunately, I felt like this news was coming. And I'm saying unfortunately, not because I think that's a bad hire. I'm definitely not going to come up here and say that he's a bad hire and this is the worst day in Cowboys history and this is a dark day. If you're hearing that, that is a bunch of dramatic you-know-what. Because the fact is, we don't know if Brian Schottenheimer is going to be as successful as, say, Ben Johnson. You can't tell me that Ben Johnson, because you don't know. You don't know if Ben Johnson is going to be successful in Chicago. You don't know if Aaron Glenn's going to be successful. Hiring a new head coach is a gamble. It always is. You don't know. You can hope. You can hire the best prospect, but there's so much that goes into winning consistently that sometimes is out of a head coach's control. Injuries, players. So many factors go into that. And so I'm definitely not going to react in that way and say that this is a dark day and that, it's the end of something or anything like that. That's just dramatic. That's not how we should react. I mean, of course, I'm not going to tell you how to react. You can react how you want. But I will say that it's underwhelming. I don't think this is a move that is the most inspiring. For a fan base that is desperate for playoff success, let alone a Super Bowl, this isn't inspiring. This isn't a vote of confidence. For a team that's very confusing right now, where they have pieces that say win now with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons, but with the salary cap that says we're probably in a rebuild mode, this isn't the type of move that you make that inspires confidence for the future. Because on one hand, I could tell you I don't know if Brian Schottenheimer is going to be here for the future. I don't know if this could be the guy to rebuild with, if that's in fact what we're doing here. And I hate to say it, but I think money plays a fact into this, that I think Jerry Jones doesn't want to pay top dollar for a head coach. And we've seen the salary of the top paid head coaches in the National Football League. It's between 15 and 20 million, and Mike McCarthy was sitting at 4 million. And this is a hire that wouldn't necessarily need you to pay a lot for Brian Schottenheimer. It stays in that budget, if you will, that the Joneses are seeking. And we definitely know they love bargain hunting because of the way that they approach free agency and the way that they approach contracts with their players. And so it is very disappointing, but I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm surprised. If you saw last season, if you know the Joneses, if you know what the culture of this franchise is, this doesn't surprise you. It disappoints you as a fan. And I think if you're a fan, yes, you're disappointed. You wanted something better. You wanted something to move you forward. You wanted something inspiring. And this is just not that move. And that's just me defining this move. That's not me saying that this move is going to be this move or not, because, again, we can't tell the future. We don't know if Brian Schottenheimer really is this offensive genius. Now, I will say this. In Schottenheimer's defense. I think I'm not going to sit up here and say that it's the worst move, nor am I going to come up here and say it's the best move, and this is the move that they should have done all along, and Jerry's a genius. But I will say this, that I think Brian Schottenheimer, under his command when he was offensive coordinator, and I tweeted this as well on X if you aren't following me right now, I said that behind the scenes he really was the cook in the kitchen, y'all. I mean, Mike McCarthy was the play caller. Brian Schottenheimer was developing the plays. And, of course, there were struggles in the red zone. There were struggles with the offense. But we saw Dak Prescott produce we saw him produce the best season in his entire career, where he should have won MVP last year. We've seen CeeDee Lamb elevate to new heights, and he is undeniably a top 5 wide receiver in the National Football League. So offensively, I would not be surprised if this team continued some of the offensive firepower that we've seen in previous years. And who's to say, again, playing devil's advocate, who's to say that it was Mike being conservative with the play calls that didn't really unleash what Brian Schottenheimer wanted to develop? Now, of course, other side of that is Schottenheimer's cooking up a really boring, stale offense, and Mike was calling what he had. That's the other side of that, but I'll be a little bit optimistic here. Now, on the other side of it, I've always been an advocate that I think, obviously, your head coach matters for them to set the tone and the culture of the organization. But I do believe it matters. I'm really interested to see who you bring in as your defensive coordinator now. I wish it was Robert Saleh, and he had interest hours leading up to this announcement. But unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. He's going to go back to San Francisco. So I don't know who you plug in there now. Mike Zimmer was very interested in a head coaching position. That's probably what would have kept him to stay in the NFL, let alone the Dallas Cowboys. So I don't know if he would go year 2 for a defensive coordinator position. And again, that just kind of shows incompetence on the Dallas Cowboys franchise front. So, again, I think it just depends who you bring around and the staff that you bring around, because I think the Joneses probably wanted some offensive continuity and keep Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb in this similar situation here. And that's what you're going to get with Brian Schottenheimer. You're going to keep that consistency here. But I can't really speak. Again, it's not an inspiring move, in my opinion. There's just my biggest concern is since 2006, Brian Schottenheimer has been in the league. been an assistant, been a coordinator, been all of that stuff. And usually at some point, if you're a good enough offensive coordinator, you're going to get that interest as a head coach. For example, Josh McDaniels, fantastic offensive coordinator, has gotten multiple offers and multiple opportunities to become a head coach with the Denver Broncos, the Las Vegas Raiders. And it's like, if you were that, you would have gotten offers, or you would have maybe had a head coaching position at this time. But to be this long in the league and not have that opportunity, that does raise a question mark for me in terms of, can Broughton Schottenheimer be this guy? Can he be the head coach of a franchise? And I think it's the Dallas Cowboys. It's just not any job. It's being the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys, because you got to manage the personality of the Joneses. You have to manage the expectation of the fans. You have to manage this polarizing position where the spotlight's on you. And it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do in the draft, what they do, how they develop in training camp, who they hire for the defensive coordinator, who they draft. I felt really confident about this team maybe running it back with Mike McCarthy, and I felt pretty strong, and I posted it on Instagram. Them getting back to 12 wins, but I just don't know. And I think that's probably just the biggest concern, is you don't know about this situation. You don't know what Broughton Schottenheimer actually brings to this. And that's where I'm at with this move. And again, you could be disappointed as a fan. That is perfectly, there are so many candidates that the Cowboys could have gone to. There's so many options that they could have dived into. Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick. I was personally rooting for a guy like Deion Sanders. And I can't believe it's been 8 days since Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys parted ways, because it feels like a month. But, it was just a circus getting here for such a conservative decision. Think about that for a moment. There was Deion, there's Jason Witten, there's Robert Saleh. There's just so many names out there, and it was such a circus about who they were bringing in, and then you end up on just promoting your offensive coordinator, Broughton Schottenheimer, who's been there, and you had double interviews with Schottenheimer, which is ironic because he's been in the building for the past 4 years. What more can you learn from him? But I'll say this again. I think regardless of who your head coach is, and I said this on a show that I was on a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I think, unfortunately, due to the dysfunction, due to the Joneses not having vision, we could see it on the field, we could see it in the organization, we could see it on how they negotiate their contracts. I just really feel like the Cowboys are going down a path that's removing them from contention. I feel like possibly we're going back to those days of Dave Campo, where we went 5-11, and there just wasn't any structure, there wasn't any vision, there was no winning. And unfortunately, I'm a hope the best. I think Schottenheimer maybe has something in his sleeve to hopefully, surprise us and earn that position. I just don't see it. And it's not him. Partially it will be him, but I think it's this team. It's this franchise. It's this organization. And I've said this a lot of times on this channel. We have had different quarterbacks, y'all. Tony Romo, Dak Prescott. We have different head coaches, Wade Phillips, Jason Garrett, Mike McCarthy, now Brian Schottenheimer. We've had different defensive coordinators, Rob Ryan, Rod Marinelli, and the list goes on. And there's only been one consistent part in all of this, and it's been the owner/general manager. And I really don't see any success that could be potentially coming this way as long as he remains in the picture as a general manager. And it's just pure dysfunction. It's a circus in Dallas every single year. And this whole head coach search just proves that all over again. Now there's a hope inside of me that maybe Broughton Schottenheimer is our Kyle Shanahan, because Kyle Shanahan, his father was a coach, right, with Mike Shanahan. Kyle went through the ranks of assistants and offensive coordinators. It's the same story that we're getting with Brian Schottenheimer, right? I mean, his father, Marty Schottenheimer, was a brilliant coach. Brian went through the ranks of assistants and coordinators. I mean, could it be, it's just, it's hard right now to have a vote of confidence in this team, especially, and it hurts me. I mean, I've seen it with Witten. I've seen it with Ware. I've seen it with Romo. I've seen it with Tyron Smith, Zach Martin. These great players that are just not Pro Bowlers, that are just not all pros, that will most likely be in the Hall of Fame. They're coming to Dallas, and they're not even getting an opportunity to play in the biggest games that these players want to play in their professional career. And that is all I have to say about this. Of course, it'll matter what happens in the few days and in the following weeks. But look, we got our head coach. Let's move forward. Let's try to look forward to the draft and try to build a team. But I'm not confident, man. I'm not. And I don't like how Jerry woke us up at 9:30 p.m. Look, I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm battling something right now. I was ready to go to bed, was ready to put on a movie, and Jerry drops this news. I mean, late at night. Come on, wait till the morning. Does it really matter? Anyways, Jerry, I got a bone to pick with you about that. But that's it. Comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. I have a good feeling what y'all are going to be talking about already. But appreciate y'all for watching. I'll be here all off season. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and X. See you guys later. As always, go Cowboys.